Jinx is probably the best late game AD carry. She's really explosive and really just has a weak early game, but if she can get going and get some resets, she's probably one of the most volatile AD carries in the game because she has no escape. So really her escape mechanism comes from getting a kill and then potentially getting like 3, 4, or 5 kills afterwards, or just getting shut down instantly. I think Jinx is really versatile because she has the 2 gun forms. She can play really far back with rockets, or she can play up close with minigun, but generally pro AD carry players play her really aggressive. You need coordination with your team to get the reset, and then once you do so, it's really easy to clean up any sort of team fight. Even if people are running in different directions, you can generally pick up at least 2 or 3 kills per fight. Jinx pros definitely that she has ridiculous snowball capability and extremely long range. Not only that, but her late game is insane. Like her scaling on all of her abilities except for her E is ridiculous. So I would rank her as the best late game AD carry, probably tied with Tristana. Jinx has a lot of cons. I mean, mainly that she doesn't have a great laning phase and she is really immobile unless you can get the reset. So it's really easy for assassins or tanks to jump on you and zone you or kill you. And that's definitely her biggest weakness, and it's a huge weakness because a lot of other AD carries have escape mechanisms, but Jinx does not. Jinx passive is her reset ability, and a lot of people just consider it as an ability to get, you know, multi-kills, 2, 3, 4, 5 kills in a team fight, but a lot of the time you're going to be using it defensively. So for example, when you're taking a tower or an inhibitor, or you get a kill and you want to get out, generally you're going to be using her reset actually defensively to kind of reposition yourself and create distance between you and your targets. Her passive is just really useful all around. I mean, you're going to be using it like 15 or 20 times across the game at least, and it's just super powerful. Jinx's Q switches between her 2 guns. So her minigun form is super high attack speed that ramps up to 3 stacks of attack speed bonus, and her other form is rocket form, which is a splash damage long range rocket. Your attack speed is going to be a lot slower, but it's a lot safer to use. You also get a small damage bonus on your auto attacks in rocket form. Zap is Jinx's long range nuke. It's really unreliable, but it's just a really long range slow and nuke ability. The enemy can see the trajectory of your W, so it's really easy to dodge, but you generally want to chain it out of CC anyways. Yeah, Jinx E, Flame Chompers, is like Caitlyn traps, except it shoots 3 out at once and has like a brief delay before they can trigger, but mostly as a defensive ability, you can use it offensively as well. It just roots them and does a small amount of damage. It's just kind of her utility ability and self-peel. Her ultimate, Super Mega Death Rocket, is a global nuke that does damage based on their missing health and also in a pretty large AoE. So you can shoot it across the map or you can shoot it in close range if somebody's low. It's probably one of the easiest ways for her to trigger her passive and is definitely her most powerful ability. Jinx can max her first 3 abilities in pretty much any order, but I like to go Q, W, then E first 2 levels, and then just max Q first, max W second, max E last, and then put points in your ultimate whenever you can. Jinx probably has the highest sustained damage in the game for 80 carries. This is because the longer a fight goes, the better it is for Jinx. So you have more opportunity to get resets, and she has just incredible sustained damage with minigun. Almost no 80 carry in the game will do as much damage as her late game with her like 150, 160% attack speed store with minigun. She also has the biggest damage multiplier possible among 80 carries because her rockets can potentially splash on 5 people, and the only other 80 carry in the game that can do that is Twitch, but he has pass-through damage fall off. So Jinx rockets can be super effective. I mean, just hitting 2 people is effectively doubling your auto attack damage, and just on that fact alone, the fact that she has insane single target damage and AoE damage, her sustained damage overall in teamfights is extremely powerful. I would say Jinx's CC is her weakest point. Traps can be pretty good as a zoning tool and also off of other people's CC, but Zap is really unreliable, and even though it's a really powerful slow, it's like 70 or 80% max rank, once again, it's really easy to dodge and not really that useful the later the game goes because you don't want to interrupt your auto attacks for a second or a second and a half just to throw out your W. So I would say her crowd control is her weakest point, but just really overshadowed by her raw damage. I think Jinx is one of the highest skill 80 carries at the moment. Mostly this is because you have to really think about using all of your abilities. It's not really a point and click sort of champion. Using W has a really big delay and is easy to dodge. Using your E is an extremely long cooldown and your only form of self-peel, and it can also be used really ineffectively. passively. You can easily whiff your ultimate because it has a cast time and is pretty hard to aim. And every 2 seconds you have to make the decision of whether you want to keep your form currently or change guns. And generally you can see the difference between a really good Jinx and just an average Jinx player, because maximizing the damage of Jinx comes from switching your guns perfectly. And even pro players have trouble doing that. A lot of the time they'll stay in rocket form even though they should be minigun, or vice versa. Jinx's 6 item is definitely her strongest point. She's, like all other AD carries, just really item dependent, but her even more so because she's the best scaling AD carry in my opinion. So you should look to get as farmed as possible and get as many items as possible. But when she becomes useful is generally 2 items. So once you get IE PD or IE Shiv, you can pretty much kill somebody in like 4 or 5 seconds unless they're super tanky. On Jinx, I run the same runes as I do on every AD carry, so attack speed quints, AD reds, armor yellows, and MR blues. For masteries, you should run the same page on also every AD carry, 2190. You should run Flash Heal on every AD carry, Jinx included. Heal is just the best summoner spell for the AD carry to have. Sometimes people argue that Cleanse will be better, but these days it's much less important to have Cleanse, and you'd have to be running into a really unconventional team comp to run any other summoner spell than Heal. Starting items on every AD carry, Jinx included, is D-Blade, 1-Pot, and Yellow Trinket. First base on Jinx, you want to look for BF, but if you can't get it, then just go pickaxe and wait for your big BF pickup. But normally you're just going to be going Infinity Edge into PD, Last Whisper, BT, and then defensive whenever your choice. A lot of the time you're not going to be rich enough to do PD, so you can substitute Shiv in because Avarice will increase your power spike timing, and you can just sell Shiv late game to get a PD. So you'll end up with a full build somewhat similar to IE, PD, BT, Last Whisper, Mercurial as an ideal defensive item, and then sell Boots for PD for 90% crit. Another situation where you'd want to go Shiv is if your team is stacking too much physical damage. This is really bad for Jinx, but you should in that case go Shiv because it provides magic damage and they probably won't be itemizing for that. There's also a situation where you are losing lane really badly and you just want to farm it out with Avarice, and that's totally fine too, because really the difference at 2 or 3 items between PD and Shiv is really minimal. So going an early Avarice after your pickaxe or after your BF is totally fine. It just depends on the situation and how much gold you're basing with. Jinx has what I like to call variable range, and that means that she can be effective at multiple distances depending on the situation. So at close range, minigun makes her do the most single target damage that she can do because she has such a huge attack speed steroid. But at longer ranges, you can use the splash damage on your rockets and safety of them to be really effective too, because you're not really effective when you're getting zoned or CC'd or killed. So at longer ranges, if you need to avoid sort of like any sort of ultimates or assassinations, then you should be using rocket form and trying to splash off of their front line to hit multiple people. But at closer ranges, if you're really confident that you're not going to die, minigun's probably the way to go. Jinx's Q is the first ability you should max, and definitely her most important ability. Practicing which gun to switch is extremely important, so you want to always be in minigun form if somebody is close up, and you want to know when it's the time to play back with rockets. So there's a lot of decision making with her Q because it has such a short cooldown and it's really versatile. It really just depends on what the situation is and just knowing how to use her minigun in rocket form. I think Jinx W is really bad on its own against a player who's expecting it or has any sort of reaction time or game sense. It's gonna be really hard for you to hit it. So generally you want to use it as a cutoff point when people are boxing themselves in against a wall or in a choke. You want to use Jinx W as a zone, so they have to turn around and dodge it for a second and potentially walk into other skill shots. So as a standalone skill shot, it's really bad, but you can use it pretty effectively as like a half second or a full second zone to cut people off from the path that they want to walk. Otherwise, if they keep walking in that direction, they're just going to get hit by it, and that's going to result in them getting really slowed and potentially get hit by other skill shots or die. For the most part, I use it that way, and then there's the obvious solution of wait for your teammates to hit CC, and then it becomes an undodgeable skill shot. So that's pretty good too. It's also good as a farming tool. It's got like 1,000 or 1,100 range. So if you're getting zoned or if you need to farm safely, using W is totally fine. It's really low mana cost as well. When you use flame chompers, you want to think about where your opponent wants to move. If they want to move towards you, you're going to put it between you and them, so they have to walk through it to get to you, or they have to walk around it, which will reduce the time or CC them once they get on you. Otherwise, as an offensive ability, you can chain it out of someone's CC or just simply put it behind somebody so they have to flash over it or just walk into it and die. A lot of the time, if you put it behind somebody, they'll kind of panic, turn around into it, and just get caught on the edge. And otherwise, if you kind of use it as a zone when you're chasing somebody down, they have to walk a really awkward path all the way around it, and that's just really difficult for them to do, dying in the process. Jinx ultimate definitely takes a lot of awareness. I think the easiest way to use it is just killing whatever's in front of you and just trying to kind of hope that they don't dodge it. This doesn't really work in pro play because it's a really easy to dodge ability because of the cast animation. You want to try to use it from fog or out of CC, or once again as a zone. If somebody's in a choke, it becomes undodgeable. If they're pinned against a wall, it becomes undodgeable. And you can kind of use the terrain to your advantage, and that's a lot of what playing Jinx is, using terrain to your advantage. I think a lot of kills that you're going to get in solo queue with Super Mecha Death Rocket is cross map, because people will recall in really obvious places in really common spots, and sometimes they even recall in vision with like under 30% health. So just try to pay attention to your minimap and see what people are up to. Her ulti is really versatile and can be used in a lot of different ways. Jinx definitely thrives when the enemy's clumped up. She's more of a wombo champion than anything else. She's not like a skirmishing champion, or really good when the enemy team is split up. So you want to look for when they're clumped up. It becomes really hard for everyone on their team to dodge W. Somebody's gonna get hit. Traps become extremely powerful because you'll probably trigger all three and get the root. And then her ulti and rockets are all really big AoE splash damage. All you really need is to get a few rockets, like 2 or 3, and then with like a 4 times or 5 times multiplier on rockets, you're doing more damage than every other AD carry in the game, as well as the fact that once you get a reset, you can just chase people down instantly. What you don't want is a split up fight where people are coming from different directions and you don't have an escape to create distance. So as a way to bypass creating distance, you're gonna have to use your teammates as barricades between you and the enemy and try to do as much damage as possible, whether it be minigun or rocket form. The way her E animation works is when you throw down your E, you're not allowed to auto attack for like half a second. For some reason, it locks away your auto attack when you throw down traps. And because of this, you want to overlap your E with some ability. So try to use ER or EW, but always try to use E first and at the same time. So just quickly tap like ER or EW, and this will allow you to overlap 2 animations that otherwise like shouldn't be able to be overlapped, and minimize the downtime on your auto attacks, because Jinx is all about auto attack uptime, more so than all the other AD carries, because she's one of the most, if not the most, auto attack dependent AD carry, and locking yourself in animations that don't allow you to auto attack just really sucks. This is why you don't see people using W a lot in team fights, because it takes away from potential auto attacks. And when you're going mid-late game, your auto attacks are critting for like 1,000 or hitting for like 500, and they're splashing on 3 or 4 people. So when it comes down to that, and you're potentially doing like 3,000 damage per auto, and you're throwing around 2 autos per second, putting yourself in a W animation that does like 1/10 as much damage is not worth it, unless you're overlapping it with something else. So try to use your abilities together, especially your E. Ideally, if you were a perfect League player, you wouldn't ever want to use abilities to farm. So Jinx is no exception, especially because of her long cooldowns. Ideally, you're going to want to use minigun because rocket loses you wave control. You cannot control how much damage your rocket is going to do to the wave, and you're going to a lot of the times push too quickly or just lose control of the wave because you're using rocket form, and it also costs mana as another downside. So try to use minigun as much as possible, and this will also allow you to quick switch, which your minigun stacks can carry over to rocket form for harass for the first auto only. And a lot of the time in lane, you're going to be using minigun to push the wave and then rocket form really quickly to get the quick buffed up rocket out. Then just quickly switch back to minigun and continue controlling the wave in whatever way is best for that matchup. Other AD carries I think have easier time farming under tower. This is because they have direct damage nuke that isn't on a 1-second delay. So I would say you really should just use your minigun attack speed as your biggest advantage under tower. You can get 2 or 3 autos where other AD carries might only get 1. And this will allow you to set up the creeps perfectly under tower. Otherwise, just do a lot of damage to the creeps so you can push the wave away from your tower. In favorable matchups on Jinx, you want to keep the wave in the middle, so try to keep the wave even or even slightly pushing against you, but not too much. You never want to be under tower in that case. If the lane is unfavorable for you, you want to push them into tower and keep them occupied trying to get CS center tower. This is going to require you to play really smart, and especially around jungle pressure, you're going to want to rotate trinkets in the river and just play as smart as possible. Once you get a couple poke rockets off, you can potentially go for an all-in with traps and zap. So there's a lot of options when you're pushing somebody into tower. Generally, you just want to poke them under tower, and this is like the most favorable situation for Jinx because rockets can push the wave much more quickly than pretty much any other AD carry can in terms of mana efficiency. Yeah, you just want to use your mana really smart and not waste a lot of it using traps or zap unnecessarily. Just try to save your mana as much as possible for rockets so you can poke people. And yeah, I would say most matchups for Jinx are really unfavorable for her, and in that case, try to keep them under tower. So Jinx has a carryover from minigun form to rocket form for 1 auto, and this is really beneficial for lane because you want to get like 2 or 3 autos off on the wave, get your buff stacked up, and then use your first rocket to quickly get the poke off. Attack speed doesn't really help you in terms of like how many attacks you're going to get off on your opponent. What helps you is how quickly your rocket comes out and how quickly you can cancel the animation so you can run away. In a longer trade in lane, you're probably going to lose because you don't have a nuke, but you can get a couple rockets off to poke them and not take any damage in return. Using this trick will allow you to get, you know, maybe 100 or 150 damage off and give you HP advantage. And in this case, you'll be able to all in, even though her all in isn't as powerful as some of the other ADs in the game. Having an HP advantage is super important on Jinx. In a jungle gank, your job is pretty simple. First, you want to get the traps off instantly. This is going to blow the flash immediately because nobody's going to walk around the traps. If you put the traps behind them, they're going to have to either use their dash or flash over the traps, depending on the champion. And it's going to really open up how the jungle gank is going to be played because as soon as you blow an ability, it just becomes extremely easy for your teammates to read the gank. Other than that, you're going to follow up a lot of the time with zap because it's extremely long range. And I mean, ideally, you're starting it off in a trade. So in minigun form, or rocket form, whatever it is, you're starting off trading with your opponent. But a lot of the time this isn't going to be the case because Jinx isn't naturally an aggressive laner, and if you do this, people will be able to read you that you're playing aggressive because the gank is coming. Obviously people make mistakes all the time and they misread the situation, so just try to play aggressively when the jungler is coming, and if you can get the traps behind them, that's most ideal. If the enemy jungler shows up, try to put your traps in a wall between you and the jungler, and just be ready for him to flash over your traps and then for you to flash as well away from the gank. But most of the time, as soon as that happens, the traps will provide a little bit of zone and hesitation against the gank, and then your support's job is really just to peel off the gank for you because you don't have a lot of self-peel, and if you turn around to use W, it's going to lock yourself in a self-stun much longer than you're going to delay the gank. So really just use your E and run as fast as you can. I think an ideal situation, equal skill players, you want to get out of lane about even in CS. I'd say being ahead in CS is kind of greedy because her late game is already so good, and there's going to be a lot of power spikes such as like level 3, 4, or 5 where Jinx isn't as good as some of the other ADs in lane. And because of this, you just want to keep up and farm, and the easiest way to do that, like I said, is just push them into tower and keep them missing CS under tower because her pushing capability is so good. I don't think you should fall behind in CS in lane as Jinx. Her mid game is like one of her most important parts, and Jinx falling behind is like really snowbally in that direction. She becomes really easy to kill and pick off, and she becomes really useless as the game goes on. So if you're gonna pick Jinx and beat down in CS, then you probably should have just picked another champion, or you need to really refine your Jinx laning skills. In the current support meta, I'd say all the supports work pretty well with her. You don't need as much disengage as you did before, but what you do need is some sort of zone and playmaking ability. So right now, the current meta requires supports to punish people who are out of position. And a lot of that comes with like playing Morgana or Thresh and catching people out who are out of position. And pretty much all of the meta supports right now can do that, except for Janna. But even Janna can be quite good with her. But overall, you're looking for a support who can catch people out of position so you can follow up with traps, W, and rocket, and just get the easy pick because Jinx has great follow-up, but she doesn't have great, I guess, playmaking tools herself. She needs somebody to start the fight for her and then get in. And once she's in, she does more than almost all the other ADs. So starting off team fights, I'd say it's best to go rocket just to get a feel for the fight. you're not gonna be able to perfectly visualize every fight. Especially mid and late game, things can get really volatile, and flashes can be used like simultaneously, 3 or 4 flashes on the enemy team at once. And this is gonna be really confusing for Jinx because she doesn't have an escape ability for when she's in a bad situation. So try to stay in rocket form when the fight starts and see if you can kind of ease yourself forward and go into minigun to do more damage. Otherwise, if you're really unsure, the worst thing you can do on Jinx is die, because you're guaranteed to get at least 1 or 2 resets off in the fight if the game is relatively even. So staying alive is the most important thing. And if you have to stay in rocket form the entire fight and just get 2 or 3 kills, that's good enough. The worst thing you can do is be unsure of how the fight is going and then switch to minigun and die. But yeah, generally fights are pretty variable, and using your abilities to start the fight is more ideal than using them to clean up. So try to use your W and E right away. And even your ulti, I would say try to use it early instead of just as an execute, because the better players you face, the harder it's going to be to hit your ulti on them when they're low. They're going to be expecting it and ready to dodge. So using it on a team that's half HP is most of the time more effective than waiting for that one pick. When it comes to objective play, she's pretty weak. I think her biggest upside is her pushing ability and the fact that she can farm camps and waves really quickly. So rocket form just allows you to farm camps and waves and push them out instantly. Not only that, but W can be used to brush check and poke sometimes, depending on the situation. Mostly W is used as a brush check, I'm gonna be honest. Poking with it is really inconsistent and sometimes wastes mana. So when it comes to objective play, you're just really, once again, waiting for your team to start it. She's not a playmaker, she's more of a follow-up. And because of this, you're gonna be waiting around a lot and you're gonna be farming a lot, because if you don't see the play that you can make, there's almost no reason for you to be walking up and risking HP for like a small trade or something like that in a 5v5. Jinx's siege is super strong, probably one of the best siegers in the game. So when you siege, you have 2 zoning abilities, W and E. And if somebody gets caught out by CC, you can instantly follow up and do probably half their HP just in your abilities alone. She also has extremely long range, which is key to sieging. And at 700 range with rockets that splash, it's gonna be really hard for the enemies to walk up and stop you from hitting their tower. She doesn't really kill towers too much more quickly in normal situations than other ADs, but if you're solo pushing against a defenseless tower, as in you're in a lane that's empty and nobody's defending it, you can go into minigun form and really destroy a tower super quickly. Also keep in mind that your passive procs off tower kills, so once you kill the tower, it's gonna be an opportunity for you to either chase somebody down or get some poke off in rocket form or just run away, depending on the situation. And yeah, one of the biggest tenets of playing against Jinx is you don't want her to be in an empty lane, because she'll push the wave and push your towers down faster than all the other ADs. Minigun is just ridiculous for doing single target damage, towers included. In competitive play, you want to see Jinx mostly in mid lane. This is not as common in soloq-esque games where, you know, your mid laner wants to stay mid instead of start splitting a side lane. When you don't have an escape ability or any mobility built into your kit, you don't want to be caught moving from a side lane to a mid lane, because most of the time you're going to either get seen on wards or people are going to be easily looking to kill you because you're in the side lane by yourself. Generally, support and jungle need to be working together mid side to take control of dragon, blue buff, red buff, or baron. And this is going to leave you either alone or only with one person in a side lane, which makes you a pretty easy kill. So you're gonna have to play really scared in the side lanes. And not only that, it's gonna take you longer than usual, like much longer than a lot of the other champions in the game, to get to where the fight is or where like the pressure is. Because you don't have any sort of defensive abilities, you can't take the quick shortcut routes to the fight or to mid lane. So you're gonna have to take the really long way, and this is just really a big waste of time. And it's much more effective for Jinx to be farming wraiths and wolves, or just farming mid lane wave and having her teammates come to her. Obviously, this is not really that relevant to solo queue, so I would just say try to push out your wave as much as possible and farm jungle camps, and try to sit in fog as much as you possibly can. The more you're showing on the map as Jinx, the more your opponents can read your tendencies and try to pick you off, and also the more that they'll see what routes you're taking most commonly and try to get either poke on you or make you blow your summoners. And as soon as you blow your flash on your transition from a side lane to mid lane, you're gonna become an extremely easy kill afterwards. So just be really smart about how you play. Don't show on the map as too much, and just farm as quickly as possible, because when it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter how much you're trading with your lane opponent or how much poke you're getting off. What really matters is getting to mid late game and grouping with your team. When it comes down to vision, you don't want to be where the enemies is. and you want to be pretty much as far away as possible because getting hit by poke really sucks, you don't have any way to dodge, and getting flanked really sucks. So try to be near your vision, because if you get flanked by like a Zed or a Fizz or just pretty much anybody, you're gonna be out of the fight for either a really long time or just dead instantly. And yeah, when you're in your team's vision, it keeps you safe, and not only that, lets you know like when it's the right time to move up. When there's not a lot of vision around, it makes you really unsure which gun form to go into, and also like how are you supposed to use abilities in what order. If you can see them coming into you, you can know, okay, I should use E first and then W and then probably follow up later with ulti when they're low. These decisions become increasingly harder to make the less vision you have. As a short sum up for Jinx, I recommend not going for super aggressive plays because you don't need to. You should really just focus on getting farmed and getting to the mid-late game and grouping with your team, because trying to make solo plays on Jinx isn't gonna end well, and trying to make really aggressive, like flash in, try to get the double kill plays generally isn't gonna go well either. You wanna be as conservative as possible while still maintaining like some level of aggression, but much less so than other AD carries. She's a lot more volatile than other ADs, and the later the game goes, the higher chance you have of winning, and League is really just a game of numbers and strategy, so try to maximize your chances of winning if you really care about that. Get to like 3 or 4 items and then 2-shot everybody and reset and win the game.